Welcome to In Dark Places. Yes, we can. I have some pretty interesting encounters while I'm at work, so I want to just take a moment and share another one of those encounters with you. I was back in the meat department doing my work, minding my own business on the night of December 4th, and this woman approached me and said, do you all have any whole prime rib out here? And I said, no, not out here in the case, but we have plenty in the back that I can cut for you. How much do you need? She said, how much do they cost per pound? And I said, I think they're $20 a pound, but I'm not sure. I'll go check. And as I was walking away, she said, $20? You gotta be kidding me. So I went back and I checked and looked it up on the scale thing, and came back and I said, well, it's actually $25 a pound for prime rib. And she said, I don't reckon. And to myself, I was thinking, I reckon. So I said, yeah, the world's crazy right now. It's not getting any better. It costs an arm and a leg if you want to eat anything good. So yeah, that's just the way it is. And she just kept staring at me in disbelief. And nobody said anything for a while, and it was getting kind of uncomfortable. And then she said, I came all the way from Gilbert. And that's like an hour away from the store, Gilbert, West Virginia. And it's as if that was going to change anything. Oh, you came from Gilbert. In that case, I wouldn't let you have this roast for free. And she just kind of proceeded to stare at me, and it was pretty uncomfortable. And then she said, I buy one every year. So, oh, I forgot to tell you about our special discount plan. For returning customers, you can get it, half off. But, I don't know. It's not a pawn shop. You don't go in and try to wheel and deal with a grocery store. It's not the way it works. But she just kept staring at me and just, thought I was going to wave a magic wand and change the price or something. I don't know what her deal was. So after 5 minutes of this, I saw that she wasn't going to go anywhere, and she was just going to keep staring at me in disbelief. So I finally offered up, well, they might be going on sale Wednesday. You might call Wednesday morning and see if they're on sale, because that's when we have our sale prices, and normally prime rib goes on sale around Christmas time, and it's getting near Christmas, so hey, you might be in luck. They might go on sale Wednesday. She said, how much do you think they'll go on sale for? I said, well, if they're $25 a pound right now, regular, they'd probably go $20 a pound or something like that. And then it started all over again. She started staring at me. And it was just a really awkward situation. But yeah, hey, that's how my weekend went. Now I present to you the Nicolas Cage Meltdown of the Week.
Mr. Lang volunteered his wife's earnings from the lottery without her consent or previous knowledge.
That's horrible, Muriel. For God's sake, please. Please think about what you're doing.
We have every reason to believe that he and Ms. Biasi have had a long-standing relationship that he has deliberately deceived his wife about. And toward that end, we have drafted this letter to Ms. Biasi.
Come on!
Demanding that she return the money immediately and in full or face substantial penalties and punitive damages.
I can't believe this!
I can't listen to this screaming!
This week on the show, I'm going to be playing my interview with Thomas Shay from the Northern Kentucky Bigfoot Research Group. We talked on Skype a few days ago, one day last week, and right from the get-go, we had a lot of weird connection problems. I noticed that when I would talk, and I would just completely lose Thomas on his end, and it was a mess. But after a while, I think we got it kind of figured out. And I've cleaned it up the best I could, and here it is. Thomas Shay is the founder of the Northern Kentucky Bigfoot Research Group. He has the largest collection of Sasquatch foot castings east of the Mississippi River. I'm really excited to have him on the show this week as part of our cryptid binge. Here he is, kids, Mr. Thomas Shay. Hey, Thomas, how are you?
Hey, we're doing fine. Doing fine.
I met you at Crypticon back in 2019 and didn't get to talk to you very long. There was a big crowd of people behind me, so I just kind of said hi and kept going. And this year I made it a point I was going to stop and talk to you for a while, and really enjoyed it.
I did too.
Did you have a good turnout there at Crypticon? Did you
Oh
talk
yeah,
to a lot of people?
really good turnout.
That's good.
Talked to a lot of people, and a lot of people asked questions. Showed me a lot of pictures, and it was interesting.
That's good. I had a good time there. It seemed like a better turnout this year than what it was in 2019. There was a lot of people there.
Oh, last year it was even better.
Oh, was it? I didn't get to go last year.
I think one of the biggest things was that weekend. This was the ball game they had going on.
Oh, yep. Yeah, I better drew a big crowd in. That's good. So how did you get started in all this?
In 1987, I was home on leave. I was in the Army at that time. And while I was home visiting my folks and everything like that, I had a girlfriend that called me up, an ex-girlfriend, and she knew I was in town and said, would you want to come up and go out tonight and we'll do something? I said, sure. So it was starting to get dark. Get in the car and get on the Highway 36. That's along the Ohio River. And it was late afternoon. It was starting to get dark. And like I said, it was like 80 degrees this fall in October. It was a warm fall. And as I was driving up, I noticed that this person was standing up there on the edge of the road, and it looked like he had a fur coat on. And I couldn't wonder what does this guy got a coat on for, So I kept on going. I slowed down because I wanted to see what was going on. And when I was looking through the passenger side window, I mean, I seen this thing that looked like half human, half monkey. And it kind of piqued my interest. And I went up, and I turned around, come back, I got out of the car, and actually followed it down the bank into a field along the river. And as I got closer to it, it turned on me and growled. And at this time here, I said, well, it's time for me to go back to the car. So I went back to the car and went back to my mom and dad's and told my mom and dad, I said, you wouldn't believe what I just saw. And when I told them, my dad looked at me and said, you been drinking? I said, Dad, how in the hell can I be drinking? I just left the house. So he just shook his head and walked off. And my mom goes, you going to go up and see your girlfriend? I said, no, I ain't going nowhere tonight. I was shook up.
Yeah, it's understandable.
And so, rest of that week, I didn't see nothing or even, I went out and looked around a little bit, where it was at and stuff. But my leave was up. I went back to Fort Campbell and I started trying to find as much information as I could, books and stuff like that, to learn what I just saw. And I talked to some other researchers at the time, and at that time in 1987, researchers were really, really protective of their work and secret, and nobody really wanted to talk. So I said, well, I'm just going to start doing it myself. And I'd look up places where people have seen things and stuff like that. Because back then, in the newspaper, somebody say they saw something, and it was like a big joke in the county. And I'd go and investigate it, and come to find out there was some truth to some of this stuff these people were seeing. Like here in my county, I found out that in 1962, June, between June 1st to June the 11th, I believe, that there was a creature that terrorized this county. Killing livestock, looking in windows, scaring dogs. There was a footprint taken at that time, and the sheriff here in the county had a big monster hunt, they call it. It was in the newspapers, AP and everything. And I have the clippings and stuff about it. People went out with guns and stuff. They had a helicopter with dogs. Later on, after that, I watched the Legend of Boggy Creek, or Boggy Creek. And the part where they went out there with the dogs and stuff kind of puts you in mind of what happened in '64 here. So I got out of the service, and well, while I was still in the service, I went around places, military transport and go wherever I want to, just to go out and actually camping, really, and seeing what I could find. And all this time I was doing this, I had a notebook with me, and I wrote everything down that I did. And I found my first footprint, and I casted it. And at that time, I made my first cast, and it didn't turn out too well. It broke when I took it out of the ground, and the second one looked like oatmeal. The reason why I got the largest casting collection is because I've been doing this for 30 years.
Wow.
And I cast everything, and in some of my collection, I have depressions, just plain depressions, but they looked like footprints at the time. But after I casted them, you could tell they were just depressions, something dog, or a squirrel dug up nuts or something like that. It looked like a footprint, but it wasn't. And later on, I think it was like 20. Now, I can't really tell you I have to look it up, but I believe it was 2014 that I found these very large footprints here in the county. But somebody said they saw a big monkey. So I went out. They let me on their property, and I went out and I was driving down this access road, and I come across and on my four-wheeler these footprints that had crossed the road into the forest. And I got off the four-wheeler and I walked a little bit in the forest and found the best set of prints. And I was excited. So I got my four-wheeler, brought it up as close as I could so I could unload my casting material, my measurements and stuff, measuring tools and stuff, and camera. Well, I was down there taking measurements and photographing and stuff like that and getting ready to cast. I took my pistol off my belt because it gets in the way when you're down there casting and stuff. And the reason why I carry a handgun is because you never know who you're going to run into or pack of dogs. I've been treated by a couple of pack dogs.
Oh no!
Yeah, wild dogs are really ferocious. Anyway, I'm down excited and I'm not paying attention. I put my pistol on my four-wheeler and it's like, 15 foot away from me or so like that. And while I'm down there, I smelled this odor and I said, "What is that smell?" And it didn't dawn on me. And I happened to turn around and look back toward my four-wheeler. And on the other side of my four-wheeler, this creature stood. I mean, he was huge. At the time, I could tell you, it looked like it was 11, 12 foot tall, but actually it was like, 9.5, 10 foot. That's about it.
My goodness.
But it was huge, wide, and it sat there and was watching me. And I was watching it, and I looked at my four-wheeler. Now, he's only like 30 feet away from me. He's on my other side of my four-wheeler. I mean, that's how close he was. And I thought about going for my pistol at one time, and I said, "No, I ain't gonna do that." So I just sat there and watched it, and he watched me. And then about that time, he lifted his head up and sniffed the air, grunted, and started walking down the ridge. when it got so far down the ridge, I got up and my wife got me a cheap flip phone. I hit the video thing, and I'm videotaping it as it's walking down the ridge. Not paying attention at my phone or nothing like that. I just know I hit the record button. So after it disappeared over the ridge, I got on my four-wheeler and went back to my truck, and because I left everything there in the woods, and went home and told my wife, I said, I got this thing on film, and I'm excited, and she knows I'm excited. She goes, well, let's see what you got. So I downloaded it like that, and my wife goes, that is the most ugliest shirt, and I told you to throw that away, the jacket. In the confusion and the excitement, what I had done is accidentally flipped the phone around and I actually was filming myself.
Oh no.
Yeah, and well, I had some tears in my eyes. But
I bet.
That's normal. It tells you you're human. You're going to make mistakes. You're excited and everything like that. You're not paying attention to what you're doing.
Yeah.
At the moment, you're trying to get the information, and it just doesn't work.
Wow. I can just imagine the disappointment.
Yeah, and then I hit it. Then I hit the woods harder than that, trying to get another picture of this thing. And we saw a couple others. My partner, Keith Lofton, we was in a place that we did some research at, and it was an active area. We went there first to make sure we could get back in there because it's way back in the middle of the boony world, and you have to use a side by side to get back in there or a four-wheeler. And if you get in there, there's a creek runs to it, and sometimes when you get some heavy rain in there, it's just like quicksand back in there when you walk. So we go down there and we're driving down there, and everything seems pretty good, And I tell him to stop when we get way back in there, and I said, "Look," and he's looking, and he doesn't see it. And I said, "There it is, right there. See it?" But where he was sitting at, he couldn't see it. I said, "Well, let's go up on top of the hill. Maybe we get a better look at it." So he drives up on top of the hill, and he's looking. He goes, "You mean it was right there, that tree with a light on it?" And it had this Y in it. And in the center of this Y was his head, covered in hair, watching us. And he saw it. And he'll tell you the same thing. Don't have good cameras on it. And we watched it. We've memorized about it. We just so excited to see it and was engulfed in just what it was that we forgot to take our phones out and actually film it. We said, well, we should have took a picture or something. But things happen. We're just human.
I do that pretty often when I'm out watching UFOs and everything. I'll have my camera with me and just don't even think nothing about recording.
Yeah, you're just in there. You're just watching it.
Yeah, you get amazed by it, and you just don't even think about nothing else.
And doing this stuff, people get aggravated, which is, well, how come you didn't take your phone? And how come you didn't get a video? I mean, that's it. You're memorized with this stuff. I mean, you're sitting there, you're just looking at it. You're trying to figure it out. Your mind's telling you, one thing, and because you actually want to do something else, and you just can't do it.
Exactly.
You're trying to process everything.
Yeah, I get that a lot on my UFO page on Facebook. If I post any kind of stories on there, that's always the first thing they say. Well, where's the pictures? Like, just take in the story. Don't worry about the picture.
But I've taken people out that actually have asked me about that, and I took them out, and we would have some things happen, and like audio recorders, we'd get some whoops, and sometimes we might get a vocal, and I would ask the people, I said, well, didn't you have your audio equipment on? No, I forgot to turn it on. I said, well, how come you didn't flip it on when this was going on? Because I sat there and listened to it. And they didn't even think about turning their audio on.
Yeah, that's how it goes. You just freeze in the moment.
Yeah, but since then, I got one of the best teams. After that, I went through quite a few partners, and none of them worked out. And right now, I got a group, and you met half of them down there at Crypticon.
Yeah.
We're all like family. We treat everybody like family, and and one thing I tell them all, I said, don't make nothing up, and don't exaggerate. Just tell it like it is. Be honest.
That's good to have a group. So that's when you started, was about 2014?
Mm-hmm. And now, at 2014, I did it by myself.
Well, yeah, on the group, I mean. Yeah. That's good to have a good group. Whenever we had our UFO group, we started out with about 6 members, and it's just down to 2 now. It's just me and my buddy Kyle right now.
Well, one of the biggest things is you get some of these people that want to research with you, but they want to sit back and let you do all the work, and then live off the glory, whatever you get, and they never put nothing in, never do nothing.
Yeah, that's not good.
Yeah, like the people that work with me right now, everybody's got a job to do, and when things come down, everybody's doing their job. One's recording, one's doing the visual with infrared, and we're doing audio. We got cameras set up. Everybody's got a specific job to do, and we do it.
That's awesome. If I was closer to you, I'd be right there with you. I would love that. That's great.
And I started, at one time I chased these things around the woods. I walked around, up and down hills and everything like that, and it got to the point where I said, I'm chasing something and it's going to keep ahead of me, and so I noticed animals would, if you're sitting down there eating your lunch stuff, animals would actually come up to you a little bit and watch you. And so from then on, we set up a base camp, and we stay in base camp. It's just like camping, really. Three or four of us are actually watching around the perimeter, scanning while everybody else is around the fire and talking and laughing and stuff like that. These things are curious. They will come up, toward your base camp. We've had it happen.
Have you ever had any of how they'll throw rocks? I've heard stories they throw rocks if you have a tent set up. They'll throw rocks at people and stuff.
Well, I've had rocks thrown at me. Actually, at one time I had a rock hit me so hard in the back that it draw blood.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, it hurt. Then there's another time that we had this big log that come flying into the camp, almost hit 2 of the members.
Wow.
And we're back in a place, man, that at nighttime you cannot you can't walk around this place at nighttime because you will get hurt. There's only one way in and one way out, and at nighttime you have to have a flashlight. Just even go to the bathroom.
People don't understand how secluded these places are, and they'll just automatically jump to the conclusion, well, that's just some guy out there messing with you and stuff. But no, it's not. You're out in the middle of nowhere, and there's not going to be nobody else out there.
Well, see, that's one thing is that we don't do it in parks in Indiana. And I come to find out that there's 3 other groups there. And I was with this one group. They was out there beating on trees and out there, doing their Bigfoot howls, and then they get a response. I said to them, I said, there's 3 other groups in this park today. I said, the evidence is tainted. I said, what you're hearing might be that group because they're hearing you and they're trying to respond. So we get into a place where there's a lot of sightings and stuff like that, and we talked with the landowners, and one of the landowners said, "Yeah, you can do it. We have to sign some, clauses that if we get hurt, we're on our own. We can't sue them." And but we're in there, and nobody else knows that we're in there at these times. And just like like I said, there's only one way in and one way out, and we're going to hear you or see you.
Yeah, that's for sure. Have you ever heard any of the infrasound? I hear a lot of that on these other shows and stuff. I'll hear reports of infrasound, and that just blows my mind.
Yeah, I had this one episode one time. Everybody gets scared and stuff like that, but I was out there in the woods, and I've been doing this for about 15 years by now, and nothing's really ever really bothered me. But I was out in this one place one time, and this feeling of dread. I mean, like I had to get out of there. It just came upon me. I mean, it was like fight or flight, and my mind was telling me to flight, to run, get out of there. And when I got out of there and stuff like that, and back up to the car, I was fine. I didn't have that feeling or nothing like that. But back there, I call it infrasound. Most animals use it for communication or locating each other. And we're doing it's doing work right now. We got a infrasound recorder, and it records data while we're out in the field. And then we get back, and there's an oscillator that we can hook to that shows us the infrasound that's coming out, what it is, and stuff like that. So when we're out there, and sometimes we don't even get nothing, but there are times when we do get something. Like right now, I just had to replace my recorder because it disappeared. But we're trying to figure out, if there's a type of communication or a defensive tactic or what. Just like we use the EMF pump. I know they use that in ghost hunting, but we use that out in the woods too, because they talk about these things following the power lines, and they say, well, it's because it's least path resistance, and that's true.
Good hunting drill.
Yeah, that's true. But also, a lot of people don't understand that these big, high-powered wires emit EMF radiation. So, and I'm trying to find out if there's a correlation with EMF. Maybe it's they're using it for directions or something. We've actually had a little bit of I want to say success. We was using it one night, and we had one come up on us. And it was really kind of weird is because all these years I've been hearing people talk about eye glow.
Yeah.
And for long, I thought people were saying, eye glow, and they were saying it was eye shine. That's what I was thinking. But everybody said it was eye glow. The eyes glowed red. Well, when we was using this EMF pump on these things, we had one come up, and I mean, the eyes, this is the first time, and it only happened like 2 years ago. Actually, last year. And this thing come up on, I mean, these two eyes were kind of a burgundy, and they glowed, and there was no ambient light. There was no moon. We didn't have no lights or nothing out there. I mean, you couldn't even see your hand in front of your face. And these eyes just glowed. One of the most eerie things I've ever saw.
That's creepy. I talked to a researcher named Larry Davis. Are you familiar with him? He's out in Virginia. They call him Grandpa Larry. Grandpa Larry Davis, he was talking. He said that he saw the glowing eyes like that one time. He said it's just like two big cigars burning on the ends there, and they just light up. It's wild.
Now, that was in Illinois when we did that experiment. A couple months later, we was here on an investigation, and I decided to use that. And we had the same thing happen again to us. We had one come up close, and the eyes were glowing red, and still no light or nothing like that. And I mean, I got people that's with me that's seeing the same thing I'm seeing. It ain't a figment of my or other people that's standing there watching it just like I am.
It's
In all
creepy.
actuality, one member actually was had a FLIR and was watching it, and he was describing how big it was.
And there's no
That's just still a mystery.
no moon out or anything like that. It could possibly reflection or anything.
No.
That's creepy.
That was one of the biggest things that we, we everything is when this happened. The first thing is going through. After everything's happened, we're looking for that. We're looking to see, okay, you got a moon out. We're trying to debunk. It was a moonless night. We didn't have no lights out there. We didn't even have our red lights on because we don't even use them. We're just sitting there, and they just come up to the camp, to the base camp, the edge of the base camp, and you can see it.
It's wild.
Oh, I used to gift with peanut butter, and I did that for several years, and the peanut butter would disappear, then the jar would come back a couple of weeks later, empty, with the lid still back on it.
Wow.
Right where we put it. So while we were doing all this, me and Steve Cornell, he pitched a thing to me about getting this big 4-inch PVC pipe, putting the sandpaper on the inside of it, and hanging it in a tree, and put some jar of peanut butter or something in it, and maybe get some hair. I said, let me think about it for a couple of days, and I thought about it, and told him, let's do it. So we get it made and everything. We take it out there to this area, and we hang it in the tree, and then it's like 9 foot in the air in the center of a trail. And we positioned it where nothing could climb down on it to get to it or nothing like that. Well, about a week later, I went back there by myself and found that the jar was out on the ground. I picked it up, looked inside, and it looked like it had finger strikes in it. So I take pictures of it, call Steve, and tell him about it. And he goes, Tom, he goes, I'm going to tell you something. He goes, I'm not really sure if my wife didn't open it up and use it. I said, okay, that's fine. I said, I'll just go to the store and get another jar and come back out and put it in. I did. I went out there and bought one and didn't even open it. Put it up there, and we was gone. We wasn't in there for 2 weeks. After the second week, we went in there, and the hair trap that was in the middle of the trail hanging was wrapped around a tree on the side. And we found the Nutella jar like 30 or 40 feet uphill. Now, you got to understand something. If something fell out of this thing, it rolled downhill. So this went uphill. So I went up there and picked it up, and it had the same exact finger strikes in it, like something reached in and pulled a bunch of that out. So I know this one here was nobody played with it before I put it in there because I didn't even open it up after I bought it. So I put it in my cooler, and I would take it home and see if I could find maybe a dermal ridge or something in it. But when I got home, I found out, that it had stiffened up while it was in that cooler with ice. Told my wife I'm going to freeze it, and if it freezes hard enough, I'm going to run it out there and cast it real quick. And sure enough, I get up the next morning, and it's harder as a rock. So I go out there in my building, I mix me up some hydrocal, pour it in there, and it hardened up. And I had to cut the jar off to get it out. And it was covered in this Nutella and everything like that. This chocolate Nutella. It was all. So get it halfway cleaned up, and stuff like that. And I'm looking at it, and you can see fingernail impressions in the tips.
Wow.
Yeah. And so we went to Crypticon, and I saw Cliff. I showed Cliff. And he thought it was pretty, he kind of awed about it. And I told him, what happened and everything like that. He goes, there's a lot of people that talk about peanut butter, but never have any actual evidence. You actually got evidence out of this. And I said, yeah, I guess I did.
That's cool.
So I said, well, here, I told him, I said, you have the original. I said, take it to your museum and put it in there and just make me a copy and send to me. And he did. And in all actuality, the new telecast actually is a big hit with people.
Yeah, that's a good idea. That's all right.
And me and my former partner, we used to use squeaky toys. We take them out there and put them in a fork of a tree, kind of up off the ground. And while we was out there, we'd listen at nighttime. Well, this one night we was out there and we had put squeaky toys out. And it was about 2:30, and all of a sudden we got this weird sound, squeal-like thing. And partner looks at me and goes, what is that? I said, I don't know. I'm sitting there listening, and it dawned on me. I said, that's the squeaky toy. And so we listened to it, and it stopped, and we went back the next morning, went there, the toy's gone. So I said, well, maybe a coon or a coyote got it or something like that, So we keep working this area for about 6 months, and we come back one day, and the little part in the bottom, it makes it squeak.
Oh, yeah.
It had popped out. And only thing we can say is that it wouldn't squeak no more. They brought it back and wanted another one. It's kind of weird, it's gone for a long time. It came up like a tree. And I checked it out real good. There was no puncture marks in it, no teeth marks, no nothing like that. So I know it wasn't, an animal. Well, something had to have hands to squeeze it.
That's pretty.
And then when they logged the area out. Yeah, we used to have this big old rubber chicken we take back here. And I know it sounds funny, but we would put it in a tree and then go back a week later and it would be gone in another tree, put it in another tree.
Wow.
So we take it out, put it back in that tree, and we'd come back, a weekend later and it's in another tree, Finally, it did this for a long time. It was like a game of hide and seek, with the chicken. And one day we went back and we couldn't find it. And in all actuality, we looked up in this tree, and this tree is an Osage tree. It's got the big thorns on it and stuff.
Yeah.
And this thing was up halfway in the tree. And we attempted to try to get it, but the thorns were so bad that we said, no, let's let it stay there. But that was the same area that got logged out and everything moved off. Even to this day, the area has some activity, but not like it used to have. Usually like in the fall, you'd get something going on, and the rest of the year, nothing. So
I think that's where a lot of people mess up at. They go out and they're beating on the trees and everything. Nobody thinks to look up in the trees.
Well, true. But you got to be in an area that's got some, trees that can support weight. We got like second and third generation trees in our forest here in Northern Kentucky. Some of the trees wouldn't even support me, tree limb. Let alone a 1,000-pound creature.
Yeah.
But, like Eastern Kentucky, there's some pretty good sized trees in Eastern Kentucky. State parks have some pretty good sized trees. I could see looking at trees in those areas.
I was at Chief Logan Park here, back around probably 2014 or so. My boy was just little, and I took him to the park, and it was getting dark out. It was in October, and starting to get dark out, and I kept hearing off behind us there, it sounded like a tree knock, and I was like, what is that? And my boy's just running around playing. He's like 3 or 4 years old. I kept trying to shush him, be quiet and stuff so I could hear it. and it sure sounded like a tree knock up there. And then I kept listening, and there was like a response over on the other ridge on the opposite mountain, another tree knock over there. And I started recording on my phone. Just barely can hear it on the phone. By the time I started recording, they stopped.
That's the way it goes. That's the way it happens. And usually when I get out of the car, my recorder is running. And, if we're at some place, we got family that live out in the middle of nowhere. And I take my recorder and I sit on top of the car while we go in and visit and stuff and let it run. You never know. Maybe
that's a good way to do it. Just keep it running.
Yeah. Maybe there's something in the area, we haven't worked this area. But 9 times out of 10, nothing ever happens in it. You never get nothing.
Do you think that they might maybe migrate? They go to different areas and stuff? Because that time in October, I was hearing all those tree knocks, and if I go there any other time, ever since then, I've took him back to that same area of the park and never hear it again, like July or whatever. We were there a couple weeks ago and didn't hear anything. So I was thinking maybe they're just migrating through there.
Well, as far as what I think they're migrating, I think they're not migrating long distances. But, when an area gets stripped of, food and and the water dries up, they'll move on to another area, 3 or 4 miles or 5. Actually, with the evidence that I've been collecting around the county, I've marked one individual does a 90-mile area here in the county. And the reason why is because it's active down around the rivers and stuff in the springtime, because you get the fall and you get the high water. The backwater comes up in those lower fields, and then it just drops real quick. And there's abundant of fish in these fields. So they're probably, eating on this fish and stuff that they're picking up. You get up around springtime, a lot of things are budding out. You got fresh buds, and stuff like that. Then you got your summer. Like this year here in Kentucky, blackberries bloomed early. I got blackberries along in my yard, and we've had blackberries in May. Get blackberries until about last part of June. I'm sorry. But and in the winter times, one of the biggest things here in the wintertime is theft of feed, sweet feed, chicken feed, stuff like that. These big 25-pound bags, sometimes 50-pound bags, come up missing. And these barns are, off places where you can't get to because the gate's locked or something like that. And you have to go up a hill into this barn and pack his 25 to 50-pound bag down the hill. Ain't nobody going to be that, going to do that.
No way.
A lot of feed theft around here in the wintertime. And I'm thinking what's going on is that they're utilizing the feed during the wintertime months.
Yeah, there's not as much food for them out there.
Mm-hmm. But one of the biggest things I've found out about doing this is these creatures act differently in different locations. What happens here, they have what I've collected here in my county. Now, if you go to like we did in Illinois, they do a whole lot of different lifestyle, I guess you want to call it that. They seem they're a little more rambunctious, a little more agitated in other areas. I guess it's just like us.
Yeah, maybe when we're just having a bad day or something, somebody had been shooting at earlier in the day, and it's just more aggressive. I've heard that though. Like there seems to be different tribes of them and stuff. They behave different in the South than what they do up say like in Washington State or something like that. It's weird behavior.
Yeah, and another thing is too. I mean, if you really think about it, in the Pacific Northwest, I mean, they got shorter hair. You know, look at Patty.
Yeah.
Okay. Now around here, everybody has described this thing with long hair, long, nasty, greasy hair on it. You know, so and it's reddish, and these things are reddish around here. Now I know I've taken reports on a white one and a gray one, and people have seen those here. But mostly everybody around here says that they only see one that's reddish color.
There's a guy that used to be in my UFO group. He talked about there was a white one sighted around Ashland, Kentucky, over here a couple hours from me, over eastern Kentucky. Somebody had saw a white one.
Well, I've seen a big gray. I've seen the gray one once. Matter of fact, I was actually interviewing the person who saw it, and it was still in the area. And he pointed it out while I was, interviewing him. He goes, there he is. And we looked over, and sure enough, it was going up the hill,
No way.
Yeah. And, he was massive, too.
You think that's more of like a regional thing? They're different colors, or maybe that was just old and he's turning gray?
I believe that's what it is, age.
I think so.
We also had a report of one being bald almost.
That's weird.
Having, patches of hair on it, like it had mange or something.
Huh.
But, the way the witness described it, it wasn't, massive, it was more sickly. And it didn't have the weight, or the size, the muscular tone and nothing like that. It was really skinny and kind of agile,
Like maybe it'd been outcasted by its group or something like that, and it's just out on its own trying to find food.
Yeah, they were going somewhere to die.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe gotten some poison or something. Antifreeze or some junk.
A lot of, speculation what happened. But, I mean, she saw it, and she was adamant about it. Now, you're talking about interviewing people here. The biggest challenge is interviewing a 10-year-old.
Oh, no.
No, I mean, seriously. A mother called me, and their son had saw something in the backyard. Now, they live in the country, a rural area. And it scared him so much, he was hiding, and they was looking for him. And when they found him, he was actually hid up in a shed somewhere, behind stuff. And when he's asked, he goes, there's a big monkey out there trying to get me. So, she called me up and told me what's going on. I said, well, can I talk to him? Sure, if he wants to talk. So went there, and I talked to the little youngster, and he described what he saw and where it was at. And you can see the fear in his eyes when he was telling me that. It's a 9-10-year-old kid here. And he had seen this monkey man. He actually drew a picture of it, what it looked like. And I got it. It's in my files.
How big would he say that one was?
Well, with a kid, with a child, it was a giant him. He couldn't distinguish size. He said it was really big.
That's scary. A lot of those missing 411 reports and stuff involving kids that would turn up missing, and they come back a few days later and like their shoes are gone or something weird like that. They have some kind of weird fascination with kids.
But a couple months later, and talked to him again, and he said the same thing. I mean, just exactly about the same thing. I mean, he didn't add nothing or anything like that, just what he saw. So I have to take it, for granted that he did actually see something.
Yeah, it's just pure innocence there. He's not going to make it up.
I know the family had to move from that house into the city because he was terrified to go outside and play by himself.
Huh. Yeah, I'd say that would probably mess with him.
Another good thing is when you're doing these interviews is young women. This one afternoon, this girl called and said, "Are you Tom Shay, the Bigfoot guy?" I said, "Yes, I am." Because I want to tell you about what we saw. And I said, okay. And then there was like two other girls back in the background, and they were talking too about describing what it was and everything like that. And they're really hyped up. So I tell them, I said, well, let me tell your friends one at a time and tell me. And the girl that actually called me, she told me, she goes, we was driving back down Sulphur Road by the dam there. We got this little concrete dam in the creek. And she goes, it was standing there by the cornfield. And as we turned the curve there, it was watching us. And the girls back and said, tell them about the hair, how big it was, and and it was just really comical, to hear these girls, doing it. And I asked her, I said, describe it to me. And it's described the hair, it had, reddish hair, reddish brown. I said, well, how tall it was? She goes, I don't know. It was just effing huge. She goes, I didn't stand around to measure it. So, I'm sitting here trying to, keep from cracking up, and writing this stuff down. But, she talked to me actually all three of them talked to me for a good hour about what they saw, All of them were talking at the same time on the phone. They were excited.
I bet it'd be terrifying. They were scared to death.
And then back in, I don't know, I think it's 2014 or 15, a mother of this girl called, and she goes, I knew the mother. She goes, I want you to hear what, I want you to use her name. She goes, what Sissy wants to tell what she saw, her and her friend. I said, okay. So I go over and they're sitting there on the picnic table and they're telling me, they start talking to me, telling me what it was and everything. They were back here on Bates Lane and they just drove back here and it did ends and they was coming back. It was on a Sunday afternoon. And Bates Lane runs up next to Jericho Lake. And this part of the lake over here is kind of swampy looking, it's not kept up real good. It runs off into the Little Kentucky. So they said when they came back, this thing just actually come up over the bank, stood in the road, walked across, and looked at them. She goes, it looked at us, and they drove off. And I said, well, would you want to take me up there and show me exactly where it was and walked across? And she goes, okay, we'll do that. And the other girl didn't want to do it. I mean, she was petrified. She didn't want to go. So she finally decided to go with her, and they was in the car. The one driving got out of the car with me, and she was actually nervous. She was out, you could tell she was looking around. She was, she'd been spooked. The other one was in the car. You could see the tears welling up in her eyes. She was terrified. So she told me where it went, and she goes, can I go now? I said, yeah, go ahead. So I'm there, and I'm looking around, and, I see where something huge had come up over the bank to the tall weeds and went down the other side. So that afternoon, my partner gets out of work, and we go up there, and we're back in there. And I'm on top of the bank, watching everything on top of this valley by the river. And he goes down the bank into the woods, and these big, tall, we call them horse weeds, the big leaves on them.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, there's a tree out there and all this stuff, and this tree started being shaken like violently. And at this time here, I was seeing these big, large plants actually being mowed down. Something was coming after my partner. And I'm yelling at him and said, get up here, get up here. And he runs up on the bank, and then as soon as we get up on top of the bank, it turns around and goes the other way. We worked that area for quite a while, and we pulled a couple of footprints out there. There's a chicken farm there too on that road, And the owner that owns all that chicken farm says that, something comes in there and, he says it's coyotes and stuff like that, but you never know. Another researcher was over in there, went back there just to look at it at night, and something threw a rock at him, and it hits water. Stay long back there. There's just a lot of things that happen around here. I got all this written down,
Yes.
in my notebooks.
It sounds like you got tons of activity out there.
This year alone, I've only actually been out like 4 times this year, maybe 5. The 5th one I knew was bogus. So when I went out there and they told me about what was going on, what they were seeing at nighttime was a big goat. They were saying it was this thing was running around, this hairy thing running around horns, So I'm looking around the yard and I see this big old billy goat come, up around, and I thought, yeah, that's what they're seeing at night. And come to find out, they wasn't rough, they did a little bit in drugs and they drunk a lot. They partied.
Yeah.
But I still wrote it down, what they said they saw and stuff like that, but I thought, well, they just saw a billy goat and it probably was a little too high or too drunk for them. It looked 10 times bigger than what it was.
No goat man today.
No.
It's hard to say what's out there.
It is. I mean, I've been out on calls where somebody saw a big lizard. And, and it sparked my mind, This elderly lady was telling us, do you look out for any type of creatures? I said, yeah. So I'll look. She goes, this morning, this big old lizard come across the road. She goes, it was big. So that's okay. And she told me where it was at and everything like that. She actually met me there. And she goes, it walked right across through here, And I asked her how it walked. And she took her arms and did like it did. And it was a monitor lizard, how a monitor lizard would walk. Eventually, I found it. About a couple weeks later, it died. It was a big monitor lizard. Somebody had let loose.
Oh, just a pet got away.
Yeah. Had a big boa one time that was down here in a tree. I was called out on that. They said the way they called on the phone, the stake was 20 foot long and about a telephone pole size, circumference. I get out there and it's up in the tree. It's a pretty good size boa, but it wasn't no 20 foot long, and I think it was like 4.5 foot. Like
Weird how they stretch it out to make them more impressive than what they are.
Oh yeah, I mean, these people here, they were so shook up over it that that's one thing you got to understand too. If you ain't used to these things, seeing stuff like this, in all actuality, it's the first time you see it, it actually is bigger than what you think.
Yeah, I would say so. They just focus in on that, and they just kind of black everything else out around it. So it makes sense.
A gentleman saw one on the side of the road, and I said, well, how tall do you think it was? He goes, maybe 5 foot. I said, So we went out. He goes, I'll show you where it was at. And I said, okay. We go out there and I said, let's do a recreation. I said, I'm going to go down here and stand it, and you come down there. I'm 6 foot. I said, and you drive back, go back there and drive down the road like you did this morning and see what I look like. Well, he did. He come back and he turned around and come back to me and said, look, he goes, I barely saw you.
Wow.
And I said, okay. So we know it wasn't 5 foot.
Mm.
And it wasn't 6 foot. It had to be a little more than that.
Yeah, that thing's like 10 or 11. We started our UFO group back in 2013, I meant to tell you. And whenever we first started, like one of the cases we first got was about big lizards. Going back to that, a guy and his dad were out coon hunting one night, and they saw either 2 or 3 big lizards just standing on top of a big downed tree out in the middle of the hills. And he said they were easily like 2 feet tall. And it scared the dad so bad he just didn't even want to talk about it again. And he just kind of shut down. He didn't want to mention it. But the younger one of the two, he was freaking out, thinking that he had actually seen these tall lizards out like that. But nothing else ever did come of that one.
I had a property owner that was out with us on an investigation, and he saw these green eyes. And he kind of freaked out about it. These eyes, He said, "Come here, come here, come here. Look at these eyes." Get up. And I actually put a light on it to see what it was. And they actually have green eyes at night.
What was it you, it broke out on you again right there whenever you told what it was that had the green eyes?
A squirrel.
Oh, a squirrel. Wow. Yeah, I didn't know they had green at night. That's wild.
No, me neither, but that's what it was.
I was going to ask you, have you ever seen like the balls of light out in the hills and stuff? Have you had any encounters with that?
Yeah.
What do you make? Yeah, what do you make of that? That's weird. I hear stories about they always see like they'll hear like Bigfoot activity, and then they see these orbs just flying away. What's that all about?
Well, I don't think it has anything to do with Bigfoot. We was in a place. I mean, there was no Bigfoot there. I mean, but the orbs were, and they actually seemed kind of lifelike, like it was alive, because they would intertwine. They would miss the trees. They would actually go around the tree, and there's a lot of things that we see out there in the woods and have things that happen to us that I'll document, but I don't know how to go about, explaining what we saw, because I don't understand it.
Yeah, it's really creepy. I've heard that, like they seem to just follow people around. They seem intelligent. It's weird.
I don't know. There's a lot of things that out in the woods that, like I said, we see, and I don't mention. It's just you can't explain something that nobody's ever witnessed.
Yeah.
Now I will tell you one time that on a video. I was taking a video in a place, and we was actually in an active area, and we got this shimmering effect going up a hill, and it came back down the hill. Now people might think I'm crazy or not. But you remember Predator, how it would camouflage itself?
Oh yeah.
That's what it looked like. We actually have it on video.
That's wild.
And I showed it to so many people, and even had a guy that said, does video work and stuff. I said, can that be something else, lens reflection or something like that from the sun? Or he goes, no, because you can actually see it. It's got a substance, but it's shimmering.
Huh.
Now I put that. I had that video out online on my YouTube channel for a while there, but I took the YouTube channel down. But a lot of people have seen it, and they can't explain it. And we was watching 911 The Hunted, and there's a woman in Ohio that had something like that happen to her while she was hunting back there in her property in a tree.
Yeah, those are really weird stories. Those are wild.
We've actually videotaped them. We would use a CT, one of those home camera things that you put on your houses.
Oh yeah.
And we use a 12-volt battery with a converter, marine battery with a converter, and we run our cameras and screen because we'd be watching everything all night. And while this is running, it's actually downloading everything onto the DVR, so we can review it later on. And there's a couple of in front of the camera. I mean, these are not little tiny dust particles. These are big orbs. And the one thing is, it makes a complete circle and comes right back up into the lens. It's really wild.
There's just so much crazy stuff going on in the world, and we just never know what's actually out there. It's wild.
I don't really get into all that stuff. I get into more or less the Bigfoot thing. We see these things and stuff like that. Like, videotape them, document them. But how can you investigate it?
Yeah, there's really no way you can do anything. Don't leave any evidence or anything. It's crazy.
Now, I do know that certain metals in the ground, like around creeks and rivers, when you get some static electricity or something like that, it'll create something that looks like an orb. They call them foxfires.
That's interesting. I've never heard that before.
Yeah. It looks like a ball of fire,
Well, Thomas, I really appreciate you coming on. And do you care to tell people where they can find you?
Yeah, I'm on Facebook in Northern Kentucky Bigfoot Research Group. Or you can go to Bigfootloreblogspot.com. And that's my blog. And, it's got my address, got my phone number and stuff on it. If you have anything that happens to you or want some information, you can contact me.
Yeah, that sounds good. And I can't thank you enough for coming on. It was great meeting you there at Crypticon and talking. I can just spend hours talking to you, and I'm not going to take up any more of your time today.
Okay.
And I really appreciate it, brother.
I appreciate being on. Thank you.
And thanks again, Thomas Shay, for being on the show this week. And thanks for your service to the country. I had a lot of fun talking to you, both on the show and at Crypticon. Next week on the show, we got Thomas's right-hand man, Mr. Keith Lofton will be here. Be sure to check out the Northern Kentucky Bigfoot Group on Facebook. They're a nice bunch of folks. If you got a true scary story to tell and you'd like to be a guest on the show, send an email to indarkplacespod@hotmail.com. We'll see you again next week. God bless you.